Greetings of great peace to each and every one of you today. I am Dr. Amina Ali. I am coming to you from New York here, and we are celebrating once again a great opportunity for us to be in the mix and in the midst of great men of honor and valor. I am going to present to you the Men of Fire 2023. And this is going to be a great episode of men speaking in spaces of advocacy for women. And I am coming to you. We have live streaming from Fordham University, from Columbia University, from NYU. And of course, we're going to be having a great conversation through the United Nations Network in this manner. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming today. We have a great audience so far. I think we have in our competition, as we always do, between the three schools. Fordham is high in numbers right now, I guess because they came on early. But we have NYU pulling in a tight second. And then we have Columbia. You got to come on with your numbers. Bring some more students on and enjoy the conversation. I am Dr. Amina Ali, and I will be your host for this event. We are going to be talking about Men on Fire, our 2023 conference. And we're going to be speaking this year, of course, on the topic of men in spaces of advocacy for women. And this is very, very intentional. This moment in time, this era that we're in, post-COVID, and in this reformation that we're calling the new mental health piece, we have some mindsets that we're getting involved in. And we're doing some things that are really revolutionary and very, very above board. One of the things that we're going to be talking about today within this hour is the things that men are supposed to be controlling, yet don't have a voice in. One of the reasons why we have so much conflict, and my grandmother used to say this all the time, that conflict is not the problem, mismanagement is. And in the space of men being in the voice of women, they have mismanaged their voice. They have said that we need to do things because they thought it was right for us, rather than asking and having the conversation, creating the dialogue, building the table to understand what was needed and then what they can support. And that's what this is today. We're going to teach by example with 5 dignified voices, all of them ambassadors in their own right, in their own country. We have ambassadors from Nigeria and Zambia. We have ambassadors from Trinidad and the CARICOM, Lebanon, Afghanistan, and Syria, and of course, UAE, Dubai, that are all going to be speaking from their respective experiences and their platforms on what it is that we are going to be challenging in the coming forward of tomorrow in the space of women's advocacy. And in that, we're going to be talking about topics that are going to touch home. We're going to give you a little bit of what we understand to be true and right. We're going to display some myths. We're going to dismay some myths. And we're going to understand what solutions are available for us in the here and now. But for some housekeeping rules, of course, please keep all of your devices on mute until you're asked or allotted to speak. Please keep in mind that others are going to be on this Zoom as well as the live stream, which is streaming from 4 platforms. So understand that all questions will not be answered, but we are going to try to get the chat active and very, very illustrative of what we are coming to ask questions about. We will set in time for a Q&A, and if you have any questions about the topics or to the speaker, please put it in the chat first, and then we will read it aloud and have the speaker answer in turn, okay? Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the International Interfaith part of this, because we have international speakers and we also have the ambassadors that are coming on. We are going to be speaking in turn. Each ambassador is going to come on, they're going to introduce themselves, and then they're going to give a little bit about what they do and then answer the question that they have for the day. My name is Dr. Amina Ali. As I mentioned, I am the founder and executive director of the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights, which is a nonprofit NGO that is acknowledged and recognized by the United Nations, and it is for the true solutions of gender and human rights violations. We deal with female genital mutilation, birthing through fistula, women that are refugees, asylum seekers, those that are migrants, immigrants, and those that are fleeing through asylum seeking measures to free lands. We also deal with IDPs or internally displaced persons, and those that are migrating here that are undocumented, that needs rights availed to them here domestically. And I want to welcome you to this event today. And I want to take time out to introduce you to a few of the speakers and allow you to understand what it is that we're going to be talking about today. Our first speaker that is going to be on today is going to be Ambassador Hussein Hamza, sorry, I said that backwards, who is the mission ambassador to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's going to be coming on and he's going to be talking about many measures that we're going to be speaking about in the new Nigeria. Nigeria just had their elections, and a lot of the four entities that they're going to be doing is going to be for women and children. And he's going to be speaking a little bit about what this new Nigeria means for women. And he's going to be bringing great measure and great understanding as to what it is that we are going to be doing in society now. And we're going to give great credence to that, because we know that when we have new measures of discipline in society, we have new takes on it. And we don't want to dismay anyone that has a different opinion, but we do want to make sure that we are included in the conversations that they are having. So we are going to have a few conversations on that, and then we're going to be bringing in our next ambassador. And we are going to be taking great credence in welcoming all of our ambassadors in order. So the next one is going to be Ambassador Chisala Chichibwala, who is the mission ambassador to the Republic of Zambia and the African Union. So that's going to be a great topic, because we're going to be talking about, of course, how the African Union is dealing with gender rights advocacy and what it is that is taking place in the African Union as it relates to gender and human rights advocacy. Next on the list is going to be Ambassador Andrew Ramjohn, who is mission ambassador to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. And of course, he's going to be talking about Boko Haram. Do you know it's been 5 years since those women in Nigeria were stolen from North Nigeria? And all but one life, well, most of them were returned, but one life, little Leah, was lost in that. And we're going to respect her life, and we're going to speak her name today as we look at Boko Haram from the Caribbean lens. And we're going to explain why we're looking at it from that lens and what has happened in the Caribbean that has allowed this topic to be very, very stern in the giving. I see Columbia has a great showing now. We have quite a few on the floor now. Thank you, Columbia. NYU, you got to pull it up because I think they passed you right now. And thank you, Fordham, for always being on top. Thank you so very much. Our next speaker for the day will be Ambassador Wissam Dodar. He is the mission ambassador to the Republic of Lebanon and the United Nations, which, of course, we're going to get the perspective of what's happening in the United Nations. And of course, he's going to be talking about refugee solutions and the United Nations. So this is going to be jam-packed. They're going to be giving understanding as to what's happening with refugees, why this is still happening, and what are some of the solutions that are happening for women in the United Nations. And our last speaker, of course, is going to be Dr. Maniac Vats. He is a physician by right, and he is the mission ambassador to United Arab Emirates. And he's going to be talking, and this one I think is going to be very, very interesting. He's going to be talking about the role of men in maternal care access. Now, can you even imagine? So many of us are like, stay out of our wounds with this abortion issue and the things that have been happening in the States. And now we're going to put a man smack in the center of maternal rights access. And yes, we did that intentionally, because there is power in the voice of men. And there is a great standard that we are holding for men in the space of maternal care. In a couple of weeks, we're also going to have Ambassador Ramjohn return, because he has a part 2 to his maternal care platform that he had. And I think it's going to be well worth the wait in having that released to us, because part 1 was amazing. I can't even tell you how powerful he was in part one. And if you haven't had the chance to listen to the replay, we have it on our YouTube channel. Please go in there and listen to that from Ambassador Andrew Ramjohn. And he's going to have a part two to this, which is going to explain, expound, and define what that role is going to mean in the youth that are going to be coming up. So what are they going to be passed on to? And what does that mean for those that are giving the understanding of what is necessary in the role that they play in gender and human rights and the role of women in maternal care access? So that is our lineup. I am going to shut my mouth for right now, and we're going to open up our first speaker, which is reigning from Nigeria, as we mentioned, was Ambassador Hamza. He is the mission ambassador to Nigeria and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is also someone that has been all over LinkedIn, that has been just praising the likes of solutions for gender and human rights. He's going to be coming on, and his topic, of course, is the new Nigeria. We had new laws, new legislation, and now new people in action. And until the votes are fully tallied, we still have to do the work in women's rights and advocacy. So I'm going to have Ambassador Hamza unmute his mic, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amina Ali, for having me and also to discuss of what is affecting us in Nigeria. And without wasting much of our time, my name is Hussein Hamza from Nigerian. I'm a mission ambassador to Nigerian at the Federation of Gender and Human Rights. And we as well know the current like this now, we are into election. Last week we had our presidential election in Nigeria. And this on Saturday, coming Saturday, we are going to have our governorship election and also state members election. And with all these things, we have been, campaigning of campaigning on how to elect good governance towards, helping the Nigerian citizen. And despite our clamors for improvement in women participation in public life across the world, Nigeria appears to be moving in the wrong direction from 1999 till date, because only 157 women have been elected into the 469 members in the National Assembly. And out of these 469, 38 senators and 109 members of the House of Representatives, compared to the 2,657 men, and while 660 senators and also 2,041 of 2,041 House of Representatives during the same period. And as a result of this 25th February 2022 presidential election and also the National Assembly election have further exposed Nigeria's failure to implement several treaties and statutes in its side, which are aimed at ensuring women's involvement in politics. For instance, out of the 92 who contested for the 109 senator in the February election, only 3 women won. Out of 109, only just 3 women won, which is very, very bad. And then while out of the 286 who contested for seat in the House of Representatives, only out of representatives, only 15 women have been declared winners by the Electoral Commission for now. And these are 3 women that won the election during this presidential election or the federal constituency, which is Mrs. Ireti Kimibe, which is from the FCT, and also Mrs. Idayat Hadibuli, which is from Lagos West District, and also the last one, but not the least, which is Mrs. Kialigo Eri Banigo from Rivers State. And if we can give more women to participate in politics, I believe a lot of development and also a lot of progress will occur in our society. And more women participation in politics, in positive aspects, especially politics, will result to tangible gains for democracy, including greater responsiveness to citizen needs, and also increase cooperation across party and also ethnic lines, and more sustainable peace across the country. And we must also take bold steps to ensure that women's involvement in meaningful, that their voice will be heard and their viewpoint should be taken into consideration in decision and policy making process of a country or a nation. And through empowerment, we can also, women can also occur through bridging gaps in education, recognition, gender roles, and also gender division of labor towards addressing bias attitude. And also towards in our offices, whenever the women were being given the opportunity for them to be part of this decision making in opening, I believe we have a lot of development in that particular offices. And let's look at our society. And if we allow women to lead, or we involve more women to lead in the place, a society will develop with the activeness of the women involving themselves towards taking care. For instance, if we can look at our family, for instance, if we want our family to be more good and our family to be better, if we give the women of the house the right, right, we'll be able to know that that family will progress and also that family will develop. And that's why we need more women in decision making and also in policy making, so that they can help us to bring a positive society, and also they can help our new generation, our coming generation, in order for them to believe that they have the boldness, in order for them to believe that they have something impact to contribute towards the development of society. And I believe when we empower women through education, they will be able to know their rights, and also they will be able to know what and when they're supposed to, watch out for what is affecting them in their society, and also know where they are going to maybe do one of these things that will help the community or the society. That's why we need more women in participation in politics and also in the decision-making process, because I've been working with women, I know a lot of things. I know a lot of potential they have towards bringing positive impact towards the development of humanity and also towards the development of society. I believe when we continue raising voice for the women to be involved, I believe we'll have a lot of achievement, and also we have a lot of development in our society. And also more people will be able to work with them towards bringing a betterment for society. And that's what that's what I serve as a women's rights, for me to to fight for them and also to agitate for them for their betterment, because I believe that when they get involved, they will be able to bring positive impact, and also they will be able to contribute towards the development of the society at large, because women activeness in politics normally bring out better change in society or in that particular country. That's why we need more women to take activeness, and also the women should have the courage, and also they should also have the boldness to participate in decision making and also in policy making, because when they have this confidence and when they have this development, they'll be able to partake. Look at the percentage that we have in Nigeria. The percent of women in decision making of Nigeria, for this, is very, very low. And they need more women to participate so that they can head them in the National Assembly, so that they can make a policy that will help them towards what is affecting them in society, towards what is affecting them in their society. That's why I'm urging all the women to have the boldness and also have this courage to partake in their decision making without afraid of anything, without scared of anything. They should be bold. They have this self-confidence that they can do it, and also if they have the belief that they can do it, they will be able to do it, and also they will be able to partake in the decision making and policy making of that particular country. Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Amina.
You are so welcome. Oh, thank you so much. You had me at we need more women. When you just said there was only 3, I was just all in. Thank you so much. We have a lot of work to do in the space of Nigeria, and the reasoning for Nigeria to have more women is not to say that our voice means more. It is just to show that there will be an equitable balance that will come into legislation, that will be afforded to us. There will be more voices for women's projects and women's promotions and the things that we need in the country. And I think that will go a far distance in what it is that is going to be necessary and needed for the moving forward of women in Nigeria. And I think a lot of times those that are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So adding women to the table, building a table that is longer and more resilient in what it is that we are doing, is always going to promote a greater outcome of that voice being elevated. So thank you, Ambassador Hamza, for all that you do and all that you are for the people of Nigeria. And I look forward to a great result for you in Nigeria for the vote. And I look forward to more work that you're going to be doing with the women. So thank you again. Our next speaker, of course, is Ambassador Chisala Bwala from Zambia. He is the mission ambassador to the Republic of Zambia and the African Union. He's a powerful, powerful man in his right. He's going to be speaking directly on the topic of what are gender rights and advocacy and the African Union. Is there a tie to that? Is there a bridge to that? Is there a continuum to that? And we're going to hear from Ambassador Bwala And for those that are here at Columbia, I saw your questions come in. NYU, please add your questions in the live stream chat, please, and I will be answering the questions after Ambassador Boala, and make sure those questions are specific to the topics that are mentioned. I know there's going to be side conversations. While the ambassadors are waiting to speak, they can be putting their names and numbers in the chat box here on Zoom and in well, I'll put them on the ones on the live stream, but please make sure you put your name, a phone number that you don't mind people reaching out, or your LinkedIn link, and your email, so that they can reach out to you and be affording to your services. Because you represent a lot of countries, there are going to be a lot of students from each of those countries coming in wanting to get some insight to what it is that's being helped in your country respectively. So without further ado, Ambassador Chisala Boala, if you can unmute your mic, and please let us know about gender rights advocacy and the African Union. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Dr. Amina Ali. So I'll start with the salutations. Your Excellency, Dr. Amina, the Council of Elders at the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights, the advisory executives, the FIGHR ambassadors, officials from the United Nations and the African Union, and the delegation from the Center for Research, Consultants, and Advocacy on Gender-Based Violence here in Zambia, and also the invited guests. May I simply say, ladies and gentlemen, I send you cordial greetings from the Republic of Zambia. So today, as Dr. Amina has alluded to, I'll be discussing a very important subject with you all, titled Gender Rights, Advocacy, and the Role that the African Union plays in advancing gender rights and advocacy in Africa. So for starters, the status of gender and human rights in Africa is complex and varies across the continent. So while there have been some significant gains in recent years in terms of legal and policy frameworks for promoting gender equality and protecting human rights, there are also many ongoing challenges and barriers to progress in these areas. On the positive side, several African countries have adopted progressive legal and policy frameworks for promoting gender equality and protecting human rights. For example, many countries have adopted laws criminalizing various forms of gender-based violence, such as rape and domestic violence. Additionally, many African countries have adopted laws and policies promoting gender equality, including affirmative action measures to increase the representation of women in politics and decision-making positions. However, despite these positive developments, there are still many challenges and barriers to progress in terms of gender and human rights in Africa. Now, these challenges include, number one, limited access to justice. Now, despite the existence of laws criminalizing gender-based violence, survivors of such violence often face significant barriers in accessing justice. This may be due to factors such as lack of awareness of legal rights, lack of legal aid services, or cultural attitudes that stigmatize survivors of gender-based violence. Secondly, discrimination against marginalized groups. Now, women and girls, as well as other marginalized groups such as the LGBTQ individuals, persons with disabilities, and ethnic and religious minorities may face discrimination and exclusion in many areas of life, including education, employment, and political participation. Thirdly, harmful cultural practices. Now, many harmful cultural practices, such as the female genital mutilation, early and forced marriage, and honor killings, continue to persist in many African countries despite efforts to eradicate them. Fourth, economic and social inequality. Now, gender and human rights are often closely tied to broader issues of economic and social inequality. Now, many African countries continue to face significant disparities in terms of income, education, healthcare, and access to basic services, which can have disproportionate impact on women and marginalized groups. Fifth, conflict and insecurity. Now, conflict and insecurity continue to be major challenges in many African countries, with significant human rights abuses and violations taking place in the context of armed conflict and political instability. Now, thus, addressing these challenges will require sustained efforts from governments, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders, both within Africa and globally. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union has taken significant steps in recent years to promote gender rights and advance gender equality across the continent. Now, the African Union has recognized that gender inequality remains a significant challenge in many African countries, with women and girls facing persistent discrimination and exclusion in many areas of life. Now, to address this challenge, the African Union has adopted a number of initiatives and strategies to promote gender equality and empower women. Now, some of these key initiatives include, number one, the African Women's Decade. Now, as you all may be aware, in 2010, the African Union declared the period from 2010 to 2020 as the African Women's Decade, with a focus on promoting gender equality and empowering women across the continent. This initiative included a range of activities and programs aimed at advancing women's rights, including campaigns to end gender-based violence, efforts to increase women's participation in politics and decision-making, and programs to promote women's economic empowerment. Secondly, the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Right of Women in Africa. Now, the African Union adopted this protocol in 2003, which outlines a range of measures to protect and promote women's rights across the continent. Now, this protocol covers a wide range of issues, including violence against women, access to education and healthcare, and women's participation in political and economic decision-making. Third, the gender policy of the African Union. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union adopted this policy in 2009, which outlines the organization's commitment to gender equality and lays out a framework for integrating gender into all aspects of the AU operations and programmings. Fourth, the African Women Leaders Network. The African Women's Leaders Network, ladies and gentlemen, is a network of African women leaders from across the continent, which was launched in 2017 in partnership with the United Nations. Now, the African Women Leaders Network aims to promote the leadership and empowerment of African women and to increase their participation in decision-making at all levels. Therefore, the African Union has demonstrated a strong commitment to promoting gender rights and advancing gender equality across the continent. However, there is still much work to be done to ensure that our women and girls in Africa are able to enjoy the full range of human rights and opportunities available to them. Ongoing efforts by the African Union, ladies and gentlemen, in partnership with governments, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders will be essential to achieving this important goal. Now, at the intersection of gender-based violence, women and girls are disproportionately affected. Gender inequalities limit freedom, autonomy, and meaningful access to social and economic opportunities. Inequalities and violence, ladies and gentlemen, against women and girls are directly linked to rising rates of HIV transmission, in particular among adolescent girls and women. Now, according to figures released by the Victim Support Unit here in Zambia, for instance, we recorded 10,441 cases of gender-based violence in the fourth quarter of 2022. As compared to 7,920 cases during the same period in 2021, representing an increase of 2,321 cases. Ladies and gentlemen, gender-based violence is a pervasive problem in Africa, and the African Union has put in place various mechanisms to address it. Now, some of these mechanisms, I'll just run them through quickly. Number one, the Maputo Protocol. Now, the Maputo Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights in Africa, also known as the Maputo Protocol, is a comprehensive human rights instrument that aims to protect and promote women's rights in Africa. Secondly, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights also speaks to ending gender-based violence, eradicating gender-based violence in Africa. Then the African Union also established the Gender Directorate, which works closely with member states and civil society organizations to develop policies and programs to prevent and respond to GBV in Africa, and many other initiatives that the African Union has put in place. Now, to end my presentation, I would like to share with you the points that the African Union outlined, to the member states. And these are the key actions that the different governments and member states should take to address the issue of gender-based violence. Now, the first one is strengthening legal frameworks. Now, to this, I can say that member states should adopt comprehensive legal frameworks to prevent and respond to GBV, including criminalizing all forms of violence against women and girls and providing appropriate penalties to perpetrators. Secondly, ensuring access to justice. So, member states should implement comprehensive prevention strategies, including public education campaigns, community mobilization efforts, and training programs for law enforcement and other relevant actors. Fourth, providing support and services to survivors. Now, member states should provide comprehensive support services to survivors of gender-based violence, including medical care, counseling, and safe shelter. Fifth, promoting gender equality. Member states should promote gender equality and women empowerment, including through efforts to change social and cultural norms that perpetuate gender-based violence. In addition to these specific actions, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union has also called on member states to strengthen their data collection and monitoring efforts related to gender-based violence in order to better understand the scope of the problem and track progress in addressing it. Ladies and gentlemen, in my conclusion, I would say there is need to redefine masculinity and to address the role of men in the fight against gender-based violence and stress the importance of education, dialogue, outreach, and awareness-raising activities. The messages from civil society organizations, CBOs and NGOs, and survivors of gender-based violence in Africa remain very clear that authorities need to tackle problems of insufficient resources, lack of justice for victims and survivors, and persistent and negative attitudes towards women and patriarchy. And the governments need to set and adhere to clear timelines to carry out the strategies outlined in the national strategic plans that have been implemented by the different member states of the African Union. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. That was amazing. I actually, while you were talking, I actually pulled up the protocol that you talked about, and I wanted to share the link here so that you would be able, so that everyone would be able to, and I have my intern sharing it as we speak. But this is a huge, huge onset. And if anyone has not read it yet, it's the protocol to the African Charter on Human Rights, Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. It's called the Maputo Protocol. And if you see anything here and can see the screen, I don't know if you can see the screen, but it is it's a great read. And I promise you, if you can, I guess you can't see it, it's blurred because I have the background blurred, but it is called the Maputo, M-A-P-U-T-O protocol. And if someone could type that in the chat. I know Fordham was working on that in one of their law classes, because they were dissecting it to see how they can put it into their civil rights law applications. I know Columbia was, thank you, Dr. Chisala, I really appreciate that. Colombia, was I saying? Colombia was using that in their social work to see how they can help women of African descent here in the United States. And they were trying to use that to see what they can impact and how they can apply that in their standards. And when I read it for the very first time, I was impressed. I didn't expect so much of this to be addressed. Now, as Ambassador Boala said, there's still more work to do. So we can't just lean on our laurels in that, but we do have a great understanding as to what it is that is coming. And if we all get on board and support this, we will definitely have a greater understanding as to what our role will be in keeping this going. So thank you so very much for that. And thank you, Dr. Boala, for a great, outstanding speak as always. Next, we have our foreperson in our diplomacy for the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights. He is an ambassador in his own right, Ambassador Andrew Ramjohn, who is mission ambassador to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the CARICOM. And his topic today, of course, is no different than any other of the fabulous topics that he gives us, but he's going to flip the script a little bit. I know we had the ambassador to Nigeria come on, but we're going to see how Boko Haram has affected worldwide. And we're going to look at Boko Haram 5 years later through the Caribbean lens. And there's a reason why we're doing this, as we mentioned. It has affected everyone in every space that we can understand. If you have a pulse, you should truly be offended by all that has happened in that, from the actual planning of it and how it was able to happen and how 100 and some odd women were taken. How do you steal 100 women in one area? How does that happen? Then once they were returned, how one young lady who refused to submit and had her own right violated was killed in this, little Leah. And we're going to see how that is affected. So many people have had conversations about this, and we don't know what the real forest was. I know those in Nigeria are offended. They are so disrespected in what they have been doing. I've had sisters, I mentioned Boko Haram in passing, and they're just like, oh, Dr. Amina, I still have tears for those women. I still have tears for the women that were before that and after that. And I still have tears for the women that have to continuously go through that. So without further ado, we're going to have Ambassador Andrew Ramjohn speak on this topic through the Caribbean lens to show you just how effective this is in society and what men can do in this effort. Ambassador Ramjohn, you unmuted your mic. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, and hello, hi, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are located. I'm happy to be here to be speaking on this topic. I just wanted to say this, I grew up in a 50-50 home because my father and my grandparents were they were devout Muslims. And on my mother's side, they were devout Christians. So I have a little bit of both backgrounds. And I say that to say this, specifically, if names meant anything, I know that word haram isn't good. So that in itself explains a lot, But let me go into this a little bit, The incident of the kidnapping of schoolgirls in the Yobe State, Nigeria on February 19th, 2018 was indeed a tragic event that shook the country and garnered international attention. Boko Haram, an extremist group in Nigeria, was responsible for the abduction of 110 schoolgirls from the Government Girls Science and Technical College in Depachi. Now, some of these names, I hope I pronounced correctly. I've gone over them, I've tried, But anyway, I will continue. It is not publicly known, however, whether the Nigerian government or anyone else has identified the leader of the Boko Haram group that was responsible for this abduction, of Leah Sharibu. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization based in Nigeria. We know that. They operate in secrecy, making it difficult for outsiders to know their leadership structure or establish communication with them. The Nigerian government has previously indicated its willingness to negotiate with Boko Haram for the release of the hostages, but the success of such negotiations is not guaranteed. the government also conducted military operations against the group in an attempt to secure the release of the hostages and defeat the organization. Now, this kidnapping, and I should mention this also, it was reminiscent of a similar incident that occurred in 2014 when the group abducted more than 270 girls from the school in Chibok. This incident led to the global campaign, Bring Back Our Girls, and brought attention to the plight of young girls in conflict zones. After the abduction in Depachi, the Nigerian government launched a massive search and rescue operation. The girls were eventually released, except for the one, Leah Sharibu, who was the only Christian among the abducted girls and refused to convert to Islam. And as a result, of course, she was not released with the others. Leah's refusal to convert and her subsequent detention has been a source of controversy and condemnation, both within Nigeria and internationally. Many people, including activists and religious leaders and people like ourselves, we have called for her release, and we are calling for her release, but it's too late. I hope not. I hope not. They argue that this is a violation of her human rights to be held against her will for her religious beliefs. Leah's parents and supporters have been calling on the government to do more to secure her release. But so far, after 5 years, their efforts have been unsuccessful. The Nigerian government has stated that it is doing all it can to secure her release, but some people have criticized their efforts as inadequate. The kidnapping of the Depachi schoolgirls and the detention of Leah Sharibu are a stark reminder of ongoing conflict and instability in Nigeria, particularly in the northeast region where Boko Haram operates. It also highlights the vulnerability of young girls in conflict zones, who are often the targets of violence and exploitation. The Nigerian government and the international community must continue to work together to ensure the safe release of Leah Sharibu. This is because they must address the root causes of the conflict that gave rise to this tragedy. The protection of human rights and the safety of all citizens, regardless of their religion, is essential for building a peaceful and prosperous Nigeria. And I know Nigeria will not only be peaceful in time to come, but it will be prosperous. And we are seeing signs of that. To the best of my knowledge now, coming over to the Caribbean side, and I did my research on this, there have been no incidents of large-scale kidnappings of schoolgirls by extremist groups, as occurred in Yobe State in Nigeria in 2018. However, like many regions around the world, the Caribbean has experienced its fair share of violence, crime, and kidnapping incidents in recent years. Kidnapping is a criminal offense that can occur in any country, and I make no excuses for that. And the Caribbean region is no exception. In some Caribbean countries, kidnapping for ransom has been a problem in the past, but governments have taken steps to combat the issue. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, our little paradise island, there have been incidents of kidnapping for ransom in the past, but the government has since taken action to curb the problem through a specialized police unit and other measures. Similarly, in Jamaica, there have been cases of kidnapping for ransom, but the government has also implemented measures to address that problem. In short, while there have been incidents of kidnappings in the Caribbean region, there have been no large-scale kidnapping of schoolgirls by extremist groups like that one that occurred in Nigeria. But I just want to say this and conclude. Um, it's my thoughts, regarding the safe release of Leah. I feel that I must say something. I have a question myself, that I would pose. Like, for example, what are some suggestions that the government of Nigeria and other reputed organizations, such as ours, should do to improve the safe return of Leah Sharibu? In my humble opinion, I would really like to offer, if it has not yet been implemented, at least 6 suggestions. Just bear with me, please. I'll be very brief. Number 1, increase efforts to locate Leah. The Nigerian government can intensify the efforts to locate Leah by collaborating with local communities and intelligence agencies. They can also leverage technology to track the movements of the abductors. 2, negotiate with the abductors. I know I said they were not known and they're not like popular, famous, whatever, but the Nigerian government can negotiate with them to secure the release of Leah if they are found. This may involve offering incentives. Now, here's the thing. This may involve offering incentives to the abductors, such as prisoner exchanges or financial compensation or whatever the government has at their, in their hands to do. 3, increase security in the affected areas. The government can improve security in the areas affected by Boko Haram to prevent further abductions and attacks. This can be achieved by developing or deploying more troops and providing better training and equipment. 4, raise international awareness. The Nigerian can raise international awareness about Leah's case to put pressure on the abductors to release her. This can be achieved through diplomatic channels, media campaigns, and engaging with foreign organizations. Number 5, provide support to Leah's family. The government can provide support to Leah's family during this difficult time. This can include counseling services, financial assistance, and access to legal representation. And 6, and finally, and I close with this, they should try, in my opinion, to address the root causes of extremism. Finally, the Nigerian government can address the root causes of extremism by investing in education, which I so believe in, as you know, job creation, and social programs, just to name a few. This can help reduce the appeal of extremist groups like Boko Haram and prevent further abductions in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's my contribution. God bless you.
Amazing. You are. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate it. First of all, I appreciate the background because there may be people on the live stream that may not know it. I know the 2 schools that were studying it, of course, knows it, but there may not be others that knew it or at least knew about it or the details. We hear Boko Haram, and of course, Nigeria knows it too well. But then we hear Boko Haram as, oh, that's just something that happened in 2018. So we have this continuing story, and the fact that you elaborated on it on record allows the voices to be heard. I know that there is quite a few questions that are going through, and I think that I'm going to start, I have to start reading them because there's at least 15 to 18 questions here. And some of them are being asked specifically of ambassadors, and some are being asked generally. I'm just going to read off some of the questions that were given. And these are questions that were the top 3 that were actually for Ambassador Hamza. And they are in no particular order, but they were one of the first 3 that were asked of him. And they asked, what is being done to build a table to welcome women to government? So one of the things that Ambassador Ramjohn spoke about is the negotiation piece. The government can negotiate with the community to be able to get that voice out there, so that at least when they're going to a refuge of such, they would be able to have advocacy and support, and the government would know firsthand what is necessary before another Boko Haram happens. The number 2, it says, is there still, oh no, we don't want to read that one. Number 3 says, what would be the issue of having women be local community advocates, similar to what the United States has as representatives? That would be the voice of women in those areas. So they would almost meet like monthly and then come back and report to the government. So they would see what's happening, and the government would be able to put in force and put in place certain things so that these women would be representative of their area, of their land, of their community, and then report to the government. And that would be either a voluntary position or something that can be scaled up into a governmental entity. But this would be something that would allow the preemptive strikes of things like this to happen, and where we would have checks and balances. So that's pretty interesting that these questions are coming through, and the students are truly measuring a great aptitude of what's going on. And Boko Haram is definitely something that we're going to be talking about for a long time, because it's not going away. And little Leah's life is definitely not in vain. So thank you so very much, Ambassador Ramjan. Thank you so very much for that insight to what we need, and sometimes what we don't always get. So thank you again. Our next speaker is none other than Ambassador Wissam Dodar. He is someone that I respect deeply in the mission that he holds. He is a man that is working with women for the last 30 years. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I was. He is the mission ambassador to the Republic of Lebanon and the United Nations. He has been holding a position in the United Nations for literally 30 years. He works with sexual and gender-based violence, rape crisis, rape trauma educator and professor. He does so many myriad of things that we don't even have time on this session to even talk about, but he is someone that I really deeply respect. He also is connected to Afghanistan and Syria, which are two countries that are needing of our voice in gender and human rights. So we welcome him. We welcome you so very much, Ambassador Wissam. And your question today, or your topic, is going to be refugee solutions and the United Nations. And we're going to allow you to unmute your mic and have your time and give us some of these solutions as it represents the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone, regardless of the time zone where you are. Thank you, Dr. Amina, for this pleasant and nice introduction. Thank you so much for making this webinar or Zoom meeting taking place in this organization. Thank you, Excellencies, and thanks for other attendees. Let me start with presenting a brief definition of refugees. Refugees are people who have fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution, and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. Hopefully, they will find safety in another country. They don't know what will be waiting for them there. Actually, studies say more than 50% of refugees are women and girls. And this brings us to the fact that they are prone to different forms of sexual and gender-based violence and different forms of abuse. Women refugees suffer from marginalization, sexual and gender-based violence, and even child marriage. Fleeing a conflict zone, some experience sexual and gender-based violence as they flee conflict. They may not be expecting they will be flee and may not have time to get their personal documents with them, like IDs, passports, if available. Usually, they flee in groups and they don't have enough food and water for the journey. Most probably not enough money or no money at all. And here, they will suffer of hunger and abuse to get food or to give them a lift to get closer to the border point where they will flee. Actually, those who chose to migrate through unofficial borders may be subjected to all forms of gender and sex and gender-based violence, including rape and trafficking by dominant gangs and militia there. While those who will cross through official borders may be subject to some sexual harassment and unpleasant touches claiming from soldiers and general security forces, claiming they are checking if they have some weapons or something like that. Actually, we recommend general security forces will receive intensive awareness about gender and based violence, and also to include more and more female members with them, so that a female will be checked by a female soldier and male individuals will be inspected by male soldiers. Actually, this is a drawback that is being taking place usually anytime refugees will cross a border. At border, women and girls are more prone to sexual harassment, sometimes rape, by general security staff or police, mainly to enable them to cross the border without having travel documents, because they missed to take with them some official documents. Some soldiers claim they are checking up for weapons and commit unsafe touches for women. And even at some prisons, they are doing the same. And this is unpleasant at all. Here, after they cross the borders, they will reach some gatherings for refugees, maybe camps, maybe unofficial camps, maybe some tented settlements or any kind of settlements or collective settlements. The humanitarian situation in the refugee camps is catastrophic. They have long been overcrowded. The number of population or refugees available in a refugee camp is out of control. They will accommodate whatever refugees are arriving in that camp because of lack of having the infrastructure or having enough space for the camp. All of them are put there and within the boundary of that camp. They have long been crowded. Very often they have lack of food, lack of clean water, and insufficient toilets. Sometimes, and in most times, latrines are brought and put in a place at one side of the camp, and male and female refugees will use the same latrine. Imagine that a female is inside the toilet and will come out to find a male individual waiting for her to empty that toilet, so he will use it. And this is very shameful. Accordingly, and based on this, the hygiene conditions are unworthy. People can hardly protect themselves from diseases, especially because females, they have certain morphological characteristics. They need to have clean water, to clean themselves, to use latrines properly, safely, and with enough hygiene. Cleaning agents and napkins and everything like that, which are not usually available inside camps. And due to their poverty, some women and girls are at far risk of rape and sexual assault. Some are kidnapped, trafficked, or forced into marriage. Usually, this is done by dominant persons, usually the manager of the camp, or those who are the guards of that camp. Sorry to say it, we are facing several occasions and several incidents of this sort. Living in camps foster insecurity rather than prevent it, and the female refugees are frequently deprived of their means of self-resilience. They suffer lack of communication with their families at the original place from where they went out or fled in their home country, ongoing mental illnesses due to trauma, including survivor guilt, financial difficulties, and difficulties in getting a residence permit, because the residence will be considered as illegal, and they should issue some documents from the general security offices to ensure they are safe and available and present and living in this country officially, not unofficially. They suffer lack of communication, as we said, and you know that this is very harming at the psychological level. They also will face language barriers, housing problems, access to medical care services, cultural differences, raising their children, and they will face some sort of stereotyping and racism. Refugee women deal with cultural transitions as a distinct type of transition with a unique set of properties and conditions, including mainly 3 phases: separation, liminality, and integration. Regarding United Nations, actually, and let us be frank and give them their rights, United Nations did very much in order to protect refugees. For example, they have the UN Women and the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights. They have the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. They have the International Organization for Migration, and they have UNRWA. You know that UNRWA cares for Palestine refugees in main 5 countries: Lebanon, Syria, West Bank, Jordan, and Gaza. Whereas UNHCR will care for whatever refugees anywhere over the globe. When speaking about refugees, it is important to mention the 1959 Convention that was established after the World War I. This convention is acting like a protocol on how to deal with refugees, their rights, how to treat them, what will be their fate after they will refuse. The UN Women, for example, they formulated something saying a need for humanitarian rights-based and gender-responsive approach to migration, governance, and give the clear directions on the full inclusion of women's rights in the formulation of independence of the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. And you know that human rights is a basic cornerstone for refugees. Some recommendations underline the need to ensure a human right-based and gender-responsive approach for migration governance, which respects the dignity of all migrants, especially women, throughout all stages of migration and protects their rights under international law, including the principle of equality and non-discrimination. These recommendations are informed by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, which is grounded in the international human rights law and recognizes the systematic mainstreaming of gender perspective in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, which is a crucial component. UNHCR activities for refugees women have evolved significantly after the year 1989 in accordance with the Beijing Platform for Action. UNHCR's policies have shifted to achieving gender equality for refugees, and the gender component was integrated in every statistics and every intervention that is taking place regarding refugees. In 1999, UNHCR worked to ensure the country reports and operations plans, as well as funding appeals, where gender sensitive and inclusive issues for women, needs, and capacities were found. This is in general brief for the situation of refugees from their original country when they fled until crossing the borders and settlements, and the International Organization for Migration became a UN entity, and in coordination with UNHCR and different embassies of the countries where refugees are available, they are making like a screening through the protection offices of UNHCR and other NGOs available in the country or where they fled. They make like screening for some cases and families and select some of them who are eligible for migration to different European, American countries, Australia, Canada, wherever. And after they decide this family will be granted official migration to this country, they call them for an induction course and will tell them what they expect to have there, what services they will be entitled for, and what they will be expecting to receive. Services, temporary settlement at hotels or furnished apartments. They will be given classes for the language, and will be given some sort of social assistance and incentives to help them living there, and to make some equivalency for their vocational certificates or university certificates if they have. If not, they will send them to study some careers at vocational training centers in order to make them depending on themselves and get the nationality after a certain period of time if their police clearance record is clean. Thank you all. Any question, you are welcome.
Thank you. Yes, there's many, many questions. And I just saying that you're from the UN is quite a few people that are, I'm waiting for their questions to load. And when we come through, we are going to give you your questions. But I do want to read a few of the questions before we get to the last speaker. I do want to read a few of the questions that was given to Ambassador Boala. And these are very, very deep questions. And these are things to ponder. Of course, Dr. Boala will be the one that will respond, but these are very, very deep questions. And remember, he was talking about the protocol. And we'll get to, wow, with some Dodar, it's Ambassador Dodar, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 questions already. It says for Ambassador Dodar. So they're loading, so bear with me. But Dr. Boala has, the protocol provides for equality within the context of marriage at the time of entry, during, and at the dissolution. In case of separation and divorce, an annulment of marriage, it provides a reciprocal responsibility toward the children and equitable sharing of joint property deriving from the marriage. Is this happening now, or is this still thematic? That's a great point. The protocol that we were talking about, of course, is the Maputo Protocol for the African Union. And this is actually something that's measured in this. Now, it's very, very interesting. The protocol on the African Charter on Human Rights, Human and People's Rights and the Rights of African Women states this. And he just, I guess, reiterated it here. And it stated that not only do we now have spousal support, but now the children have support written in. So that's amazing how that is something that is being considered. Now, whether it's active and whether it's still ongoing, or maybe they're building layers to this, I'm just impressed with that. Another one, the ambassador to Chile, the actual UN ambassador here, US ambassador to Chile, said, please have the Zambian ambassador add the protocol that adds safeguards to the rights of widows to inherit property, and also provides for an equitable share in parents' property for both men and women. This is important and needs and very needed in tribal areas. This is huge in Islam. One of the things that we are big on is the inheritance of those that are widowed, those that are orphaned. And now it's saying even some of those pieces are even inscribed in it. So now not only is it coming out of the religious context, but it's coming into the state. You know, one of the things we have is we obey the laws of the land and the laws of the Quran. And one of the things that is huge is being able to separate church and state, but make an equitable divide in it. Now, I think in having this, to speak on widows and the properties for the orphans and the parent share divided equally, just speaks volumes as to the diplomacy and the democracy that it holds. So I am very, very impressed with that. And to have an ambassador speak to that, to one of our ambassadors, is pure wisdom. And just to relay that, he is a very, very Christian man. So to relay that just allows me to know that, you know, the truth is written. And we don't have to go into a religious context. It's just to know if there's religions that are understanding the truth, it will be symmetrical. And that is truly honorable. So I am very, very impressed with this. And this was, of course, the charter was written to align the rights of women. And of course, the male's voice was in it, in the declaration of it. So bravo. Thank you so very much. Ambassador Dodar, you have quite a few. I'm going to lay out a couple. It says, will the UN lay out, apart from comprehensively laying down fundamental rights for women and girls, does it demand that state parties provide remedies to women and girls whose rights have been infringed, or will that be under the Declaration of Human Rights? That's one question. Does it require state parties to ensure that women have equal access to housing? You mentioned housing, acceptable living conditions, and the right to a positive cultural context, regardless of marital status. So this is a huge thing. This is really, really something that I'm appreciating in that. I'm going to go to Professor Vatz, and then again, if we have time at the end, please think about that. So does the UN provide states to establish adequate housing, or is that even regardless of marriage? And the other question is, apart from comprehensively laying down fundamental rights for women and girls, does it demand that state parties provide remedies to women, or is this one of the things that is encompassed in UN contexture? So these are two questions that you'll be able to answer. Yes.
Okay. Actually, refugees are working in different professions in the country where they fled to. For example, in Lebanon, in different countries, they are professionals in agriculture, in some industries, in some construction works, and they are working and making money. And officially, the governments of that countries are overlooking their working there without having work permit. So they are making some earnings to rent some residence. In addition, UNHCR is sorting some families that are poor and in need for support, and providing some subsidies, financial subsidies for them, in addition for medical care services. And they are providing legal services. For example, you mentioned if some are suffering from divorce or something like that, they are lobbying and providing legal support for those who are in need. Regarding children who are unaccompanied children, they deal with UNICEF and with some NGOs to make those children feel peace and provide education for them. Also, UNHCR, for example, is contracting with a lot of schools in country just to make the children of refugees receiving the education, as education is a basic right of their human rights. So they are receiving education, medical care services, legal support, and some financial subsidies to enable them living in the country where they fled to. Here in Lebanon, they are also working in different professions, in mechanical issues, construction, and agriculture, and everything. But the major hazard is that refugees' children, most of them are working in child labor market.
Okay.
Like at the traffic signs, they are cleaning the screen window, they are working at the gasoline stations, fuel stations, they are working agriculture. And as you know, there are some sort of professions which are the worst forms of child labor. They should not be there. And retaining them into schools is very hard, because the parents will say, we are poor and we need to send our children to work to get us money so we can survive. But the actual issue is not like that. They want only to get money. And the children are dropouts from schools and going to marketplace where they are subject to more forms of abuse and sexual abuse and harassment, as you know. Regarding residents, UNHCR is not providing residents and providing rent value for families to rent, but they are providing financial subsidies in order to enable them being resilient in their conditions. In addition, they are making their own money and they are generating their own income.
Sure.
Also, the ladies are working in embroidery and in as tailors and everything, like sewing machines they have, and doing services for people of the hosting community. And in some instance of time, there was some clash between the host community and refugees, because host community are observing refugees are getting more support from NGOs and from the UN community and organizations, but the host community, even though they are poor, but not receiving that much. So all projects started to have 10% for hosting community, 90% for refugees. Then it was the 20 by 80. Now it is 50 by 50 in order to minimize the tension between the two parties. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dodo. I really appreciate that and that insight. I'm going to ask each of the, we're going to go to our last speaker, Dr. Mayak Batts, and he's going to give us his presentation. But I'd like for each of the ambassadors to put their name and their email in there so that those that are interested in sending the questions can send it directly to you, because these students are definitely needing this information. We have Fordham Law that's on, we have Columbia University, and we have NYU, and all of them have law and medicine students going through public health measures, and those that are going to social work and social services, social service work and human rights work, sorry. And they are needing these answers to these questions. So if you can just put your name and your, of course, your title and then your email, and they'll email the questions directly. Last but not least, and so that he can get back to clinic, Dr. Mayank Vance, who is a physician in his own right. And Dr. Vance is mission ambassador to the United Arab Emirates. He is also a medical doctor in his own right. And he is going to be speaking very quickly on the role of men in maternal care access. Now, he's going to be speaking about how it's happening in Dubai, which is a role model for us, because a lot of the cases that are there are not as rural and insufficient as there are in developing countries, but there are measures that we can emulate, repeatable processes that are there that are already in place. So these are some of the things that we can look to in the future and what we can replicate now. So Dr. Batts, if you would, could you unmute your mic and please speak to us on your topic? Thank you.
Good evening all. It's my pleasure and honor to act as a participant in this important topic. I'm working as a senior specialist in pulmonary medicine, sleep medicine, critical care, and interventional pulmonology. And I'm an avid author and researcher as well. Regarding, as per the topic given to me by Her Highness Amina, Dr. Amina. So the maternal care in UAE is definitely it's a very well developed country. So it is very excellent care of maternal health being given. We have dedicated, highly specialized hospitals with highly specialized doctors available, and they are working 24/7 and providing the care to all of the sick patients, critical patients, and all type of patients. As far as the role of man is concerned for the maternal care, definitely man and woman both are equally responsible for the care of the kid starting from the pregnancy. This is like I believe that men should take care of the female in each and every respect at the very start of the pregnancy till the time the baby comes up and till the time the baby grows to a certain extent, like 3 year, 4 year, till the time we can manage it in the school or nursery. Like for example, similar case, me and my wife both are doctors, and when my wife was pregnant, I used to take care of her in all possible ways, taking her to the doctor, taking her to the for the vaccination, for lab test, for investigations whenever required. And although initially during the initial period of pregnancy, they don't need much of care because but as the pregnancy advances, obviously the kid grows, they feel more hormonal changes, they feel more physiological changes in the body. So it is our duty to help them more from the medical point of view, and from the human point of view, and from the male point of view as well. So when my wife was pregnant and she was on call duties, I used to drive. She was sitting as a passenger and I used to drive. And sometimes it also happened that I was having on call, she was having on call, and I used to take her to hospital, dropping her there, and then going for my call. So it is a equal distribution of the this thing of the duties, and we should equally contribute for the for our kids. When the during this period, female needs psychological support, physical support, and all kind of support. So men should be ready in every aspect to give the support to the female till the time the baby comes out. And once the baby is small, because nowadays most of the places it's a nuclear families, there is no support from the elderly because people are living only husband, wife, and their kids. So in nuclear family, it becomes a little more tough. You can hire any nanny or any maid, but then also it is not up to that, like maybe up to not that much helpful as we can help each other. So as a man, my most important message is we must equally contribute, or more than equally contribute, while our wife is pregnant, and during the development of the kid, and during the initial phase of the kid development. It is equal responsibility of the wife and the husband to grow their kid in the best possible way to become the best human being. Thank you very much.
quick and succinct. I thank you so very much, Dr. Vats. Thank you again
Thank you very much.
for sharing that. As you know, in Dubai and UAE, it is very, very developed. We have a higher educational level, also a higher
Yes.
delivery of care and services. Their technology is above board. So there is
Yes.
going to be a greater outcome. Many
Yes.
of the cases that I have seen specifically as an OBGYN that have come from Dubai, especially the medical records, have been very, very formidable in case and point. They've had a diagnosis, they've had a follow-up care, they've had aftercare. It is very, very intentional. And these are certain models that we should have all around the world, that there shouldn't be just a drop-off point in the care that is had, especially as a woman that has had 5 of them. For anyone to belay my care in any way would have affected adversely the children and the care that I had postpartum with. So I really respect the outpouring of support for this such technology, and it's definitely something that will be reverenced later on. Now, thank you, Dr.
It's important to know. It's important to note that we have very highly specialized government hospital as well as private hospital dedicated to maternal health and child health. I believe we have 3 dedicated maternal hospitals in the private sector which are very advanced, and 1 big hospital in the government in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and in Sharjah. Those who are dedicated for the maternal care. Those are specifically gynae obs hospital, and with the associated kids hospital, like child hospital, children hospital. So they provide excellent care with the highly qualified doctors and highly best possible technology in the world. That is all because UAE has a vision and they are highly developed in each and every sense.
Yes.
So I really appreciate here. I'm working here and I'm getting, although I'm not directly in touch with these hospitals, but definitely they are very highly sophisticated model of care, and such model of care hospital should be established in every part of the world.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And there should be a standard of protocol, just like Ambassador Dodar said that there is a protocol that is set. When Ambassador Bawala said that there is protocols to be met, there should be a medical protocol that is a standard of care all around the world. And I think CDC Africa, CDC United States should automatically put that into place and allow that disparity, close that gap, and allow those that are in our country, even the United States. I mean, we can't even match some of the technology that is happening in Dubai and UAE intentionally, because there isn't protocols in place to demand that quality and that level of care for women, for children, and the outcome of those children. So thank you so very much for teaching us something and giving us a clearer view of what it is that we're doing. Okay, in the interest of time, we have the UN link ends in about 7 minutes. So what I'm going to do is have each of you, as you can, and we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to start with the first ambassador and just go round robin. We're going to start with Ambassador Hamza. Then we're going to go to Ambassador Bawala, Dr. Bawala. And we're going to then go to Ambassador Ramjan, Ambassador Dodar, and Ambassador Vats, and give one piece of advice that you would give to someone coming up behind you. We have mentors, and I told you we have NYU, Columbia, and Fordham University, and these students are going into medicine, into law, into poli-sci, which is politics, and they're also going into social work. So these are the students that are on here listening to your conversation today. We also have the live stream that is coming from our network. So we have those that are in gender and human rights that are listening, and NGOs that are taking notes. So I'm going to start with Ambassador Hamza. Please unmute your mic, and in 30 seconds, give us a gem that you are saying and offering, something that you want to give to those coming behind you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Amina Ali, for giving the opportunity. And I believe when we come together collectively, I believe we can be able to achieve what we want. And I'll also, empower young people, especially women and young girls in my community, towards making what is right for them, and also towards knowing what is wrong for them, so that they can, raise their voices in order to fight for what they want, and in order to fight for what is affecting them in their society through empowerment. I'm going to, implement projects into this project that will make them, I will train them so that they can be able to defend themselves whenever they are facing challenges, and also whenever they are facing problems in their community. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Very quick. Okay, Dr. Boala, 30 seconds. Give us something that you would share with a mentee that you would have under your wing. Oh,
Okay, great. Two pieces of advice. Firstly, to those that are coming up, I want you to understand, especially the young people, I want you to understand that we're not just the leaders of today, but also the leaders of tomorrow. So whatever that is affecting the community today is directly affecting us. Because those that are in power are not going to be in power tomorrow. We are the ones who are going to take on those leadership positions. So we need to be very deliberate in when government comes through and says, we want to implement this policy. What do you think about it? Let us ensure that we give our concrete points, our concrete research, data, analytics, and all that to ensure that we come up with great policies that are going to speak to the needs of the different people in the communities where we are coming from. Then secondly, I think to governments, I think my greatest piece of advice is that governments around the world should provide a clear domestic national action plan on gender-based violence by providing sustainable gender machinery to NGOs, CSOs, and CBOs working on the grassroots to end gender-based violence. Government should also actualize the anti-GBV fund to ensure that the NGOs get resources to implement their programs in the different communities across the different countries, in the world. Yeah, thank you so much. I think those are my advice I'd like to give to the communities. Thank you so much.
thank you so much. Yes, and remember, put your information in the chat so that those that are coming after you can respond. Thank you so much. Ambassador Ramjon, you are next. Please unmute your mic. Give us 30 seconds. Some advice. I know you've been here and done it, and I know it's a lot. So give it to us in a nutshell, please.
Well, I'm going to steal that from, and I'm going to use Chichi's statements, and I'm going to expand on that because he made some very, very important points, right?
Absolutely.
But since we are addressing, and we do address human rights, as we did today, and gender equality, as we did today, I'd like to say just two things. One on human rights as we go forward to those coming on, as you said, and something on gender equality. So first of all, human rights are the foundation of a just and equitable society. They ensure that every person is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or any other characteristic. By promoting and protecting human rights, we create a world that is fair and inclusive for everyone. My second point on the gender equality, and this is really important because I want our sisters to look at it this way. And I say this because this is very important. Gender equality is not just a moral issue. It is also an economic one. When we create a society where everyone has an equal opportunity to contribute and succeed, we all benefit. It's time to close the gender gap and unleash the full potential of our economy. Thank you.
Amazing. Wow. Ambassador Dodar, you got to come in behind that. So please give us 30 seconds, please.
Okay. My advice for those interns and who are willing and wishing to come behind, my advice and recommendation is to read and read and read as much as you can about refugees and your ancestors dealing with refugees, displaced populations, vulnerable persons, dealing with the crisis, natural and conflict zones, mainly UNHCR, UNRWA, UNFPA, IOM, UNICEF, WHO, and many others. Read and read and read. Also, read about international NGOs dealing with the crisis and refugees, natural disasters, conflicts, like Danish Refugee Council, IRC, IMC, ICRC, IFRC, Red Crescent Societies, Amnesty, and many others. Read about organizations dealing with the human rights. Also, it is very important to try to visit some refugee camps and meet with those who are affected and how they are treated and what they are missing. Stand on their complaint and their sufferings, and please try to put yourself in shoes of them so that you will feel what they feel and you live what they lived, and be aware of everything that related to their suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Dodar. And last but not least, Dr. Vats, can you please come on 30 seconds, give us some advice for those mentors that are coming after us? Thank you so much.
My suggestion, as far as I'm being a medical doctor concerned, that each and every country should try to provide best care from the maternal angle and from the children point of view, best possible hospital, at least in the major cities, where the nearby population, where the dweller of small cities can go and can get the best quality of care. Like in each and every country, there should, in all major cities, there should be dedicated hospitals for the maternal and child care. Although it's next to, like, we can say, it is not very easy or not but it is not impossible. It is difficult but not impossible. If the government think and they want to develop the good hospitals, definitely they can develop excellent state-of-the-art hospital to provide all best level of care to the maternal and child health.
Thank you. Thank you
This
so
is
much.
my message. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you very
Vats.
much.
I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. I know you have to go back to clinic. So thank you so very much for your time. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much.
For the rest of the ambassadors, thank you so much. Please check your emails for our digital gift to you. And thank you again. I think they'll be sending it out in the next 10, 15 minutes. So check your emails in the next half an hour or so. For those from Columbia University, thank you so much for coming out tonight. There was 60 of you, so I think you kind of beat it. NYU, there was about 35 students, and Fordham was 46. So Columbia, congratulations. We always do this competition to see how many students come out from each of the colleges. So Columbia, you won this time. Congratulations. Thank you so very much for your time here. For those of you that came on the Zoom live, thank you again for your time. To the ambassadors, to the consul generals and the high commissioners and any other diplomats that came on the live stream, I want to thank you for coming. This is very, very important. This is a UN side event, an official UN side event. So it is going to be aired live, and it's going to be on repeat. So this information is not going to be lost. I'm also, once it is edited, I'm going to be sending each of you the links so that you will have a digital copy of your speech. And it will be aired as your speech for the UN side event. So it will be official and it will be ordained as such. So for those honored guests, supporters, and local attendees, I want to thank you. And I want to offer you the greatest thanks that I can give to each and every one of you on today, just being an advocate for gender and human rights everywhere. Until we meet again, thank you so very much. God bless
Thank you
and
very
good night.
much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.